It's strange how one question can rip open everything you've spent years hiding. The night she asked me that, I remember the rain tapping softly against the window, her voice low and curious, her eyes glinting in the warm light of my living room. "Why don't you have a girlfriend?" she asked, smiling like it was nothing. But to me, it wasn't nothing. To me, that question was a knife twisted gently, because the truth was something I could never tell her, that she was the reason. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the kind of love that changes people quietly, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps stories like this reach more hearts that might need them. I met her 3 years ago. On one of those nights when everything feels heavier than it should, I was helping my best friend move into a new apartment, exhausted and half-soaked from carrying boxes through the rain. She was his older sister, calm, grounded, with this effortless grace that made everything around her feel steady. Her name was Sarah. I still remember how she thanked me that night, handing me a towel and a mug of tea, as if I was some old friend instead of a stranger who'd just spent 4 hours hauling furniture. She smiled, and for the first time in a long while, I felt seen. Back then, I was 24, still trying to find my place in a world that seemed to sprint while I barely managed to walk. I'd just left a job that drained the life out of me and was crashing on a friend's couch while figuring out my next move. Sarah was 30, working as a teacher, living in that quiet corner apartment where the air always smelled faintly of jasmine and coffee. She wasn't someone you'd notice because of flash or noise. She drew you in by being still, by being present in a way most people never are anymore. When my friend moved away a few months later for work, Sarah and I stayed in touch. It started with random messages, her checking in, to make sure I was eating properly, me fixing small things around her apartment whenever I visited. Over time, the visits became a routine. Sometimes I'd stop by after work. Sometimes she'd drop off leftovers because she made too much. It was simple, harmless, at least that's what I told myself. But as weeks turned into months, something changed. It was in the quiet moments. The way she'd laugh and touch my arm without realizing it. The way she listened when no one else did. The way she made a place that wasn't mine feel like home. There was a warmth in her presence that I hadn't known I was starving for. She made me want to be better, not for her approval, but because she made me remember that I could be. And yet, I never said anything. Because life has rules, and sometimes love shows up when it shouldn't. She was older, more grounded, and still healing from a marriage that had left her cautious. I knew I couldn't add to her confusion. So I stayed the quiet friend, the one who showed up when her car wouldn't start, who painted her living room on a Sunday morning, who listened to her stories about her students, while pretending not to fall deeper each time she smiled. There were moments, though, when I thought she felt it too. Like the night her electricity went out during a storm, and we sat by candlelight, sharing old music and laughter. The way her eyes lingered on me, the way she sighed softly before looking away. Those little moments were the ones that kept me awake at night. But every time I tried to read more into them, she'd gently pull away with her usual grace, like she could sense the line I was afraid to cross. Then came the night she asked that question. It was late. We'd just finished watching an old movie, something slow and nostalgic, and she was sitting beside me, legs curled up on the couch, hair falling loosely over her shoulder. The air between us felt different that evening, quieter, heavier. She looked at me suddenly and smiled. Her tone playful but curious. "You're a good guy, you know that? Why don't you have a girlfriend?" I froze. The world seemed to still for a second. I wanted to laugh it off, to say something casual, but the truth rose in my throat like a tide I couldn't control. Because how do you tell someone that every woman you meet feels wrong because none of them are her? How do you say that you can't love anyone else when your heart already chose, silently, without permission? So, I smiled instead. I shrugged, said something forgettable, something safe. She laughed, teasing me lightly, and I laughed too, pretending it didn't hurt. But inside, something cracked open that night. After that, I tried to pull back. I told myself I needed distance, that I couldn't keep orbiting someone I could never have. I focused on work, avoided her messages longer than usual, and found excuses to be busy. She noticed, of course. Sarah always noticed, but she didn't push. She just sent me a message one day that said, "I hope you're okay. The world needs people like you." That was all it took for me to start falling all over again. A year passed like that, close then distant, always caught in that in-between space that never felt enough but was safer than the truth. I watched her heal, watched her smile more, watched her finally find peace with herself. I should have been happy for her, and I was, but there was an ache underneath it all, a quiet longing that never faded. Then, one evening, something changed. I came by her place to drop off some things she'd asked me to help with, and she looked different, not just in how she dressed, but in her energy. She seemed lighter, radiant, like someone who had finally stopped carrying something heavy. She told me she had been talking to someone new, a man she met through a friend. She wasn't sure where it was going, but he made her smile. I remember forcing myself to smile back, saying she deserved happiness. But when I left her apartment that night, I couldn't drive home. I parked on the side of the road and just sat there for hours, staring at the rain. Because that was the night I realized I had been waiting for something that was never mine to wait for. Life has this cruel kindness about it. It gives you people who change you, then teaches you to let them go. And sometimes the most selfless thing you can do for someone you love is to not stand in the way of their happiness. Months later, she moved to another city. She called me before she left, thanking me for everything, for being there when she needed someone, for helping her believe in good people again. I told her I was the one who should be thankful. What I didn't tell her was that she had been my light, the reason I got back on my feet, the reason I started believing in myself again. I never told her she was the reason I didn't have a girlfriend, that she was the quiet love story I lived entirely in silence. Because sometimes love doesn't need to be confessed to be real. Sometimes the most powerful love stories are the ones that never get told, the ones that live quietly in the corners of our hearts, shaping us forever. Years passed. I built a life, a better one, stronger and more meaningful. I started writing, traveling, creating things I'd once been too afraid to try. And yet, every now and then, I'd find myself thinking of her, not with sadness anymore, but with gratitude. Because she had been the storm that cleared my sky, the calm that taught me what love should feel like, gentle, patient, and selfless. One day, I got a message from her, just a simple, "Hey, I saw something today that reminded me of you. Hope you're doing great." I smiled because I finally was. Love doesn't always end with forever. Sometimes it ends with peace, and if you're lucky, it leaves you a little kinder, a little softer, and a little more capable of loving the world around you. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever loved someone quietly, selflessly, or had to let go for the sake of love, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Every engagement helps these real, emotional stories reach more people who need to hear them. Before we end, I have one special request. Tell me in the comments, have you ever loved someone you never confessed to? How did it change you? Sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones that never got told, but still changed everything.